Today, yesterday we left off on page 59 of the PDF. So we had scheduled the first experimental flight trial of SLV-3 for 10th August 1979. The primary goals of the mission were to realize a fully integrated launch vehicle to evaluate onboard systems like stage motors, guidance and control systems, and electronic subsystems, and to evaluate ground systems like checkout, tracking, telemetry, and real time data facilities in launch operations built at the Sriharikota Launch Complex. The 23-meter long four stage SLV rocket weighing 17 tons finally took off elegantly at 0758 hours and immediately started following its programmed trajectory. Stage 1 performed to perfection. There was a smooth transition from this stage to the second stage, where we were spellbound to see our hopes flying in the form of the SLV-3. Suddenly, the spell was broken. The second stage, went out of control. The flight was terminated after 317 seconds, and the vehicle's remains, including my favorite fourth stage with the payload splashed into the sea 560 kilometers off Sriharikota. The incident caused us profound disappointment. I felt a strange mix of anger and frustration. Suddenly, I felt my legs become so stiff that they ached. The problem was not with my body, something was happening in my mind. The premature death of my hovercraft Nandi, the abandoning of the ratter, the abortion of the SLV Diamond fourth stage, all came alive in a flash, like long buried phoenix rising from its ashes. Sorry. Over the years, I had somehow learned to absorb these aborted endeavors, had come to terms with them, and pursued fresh dreams. That day, I relived each of those setbacks in my deep despondency. What do you suppose could be the cause of it? Somebody asked me in the blockhouse. I tried to find an answer, but I was too tired to try and think it out, and gave up the effort as futile. The launch was conducted in the early morning, preceding by a full night's countdown. Moreover, I had hardly any sleep in the past week. Completely drained, mentally as well as physically, I went straight to my room and slumped onto the bed. A gentle touch on my shoulder woke me up. It was late in the afternoon, almost approaching evening. I saw Dr. Brahm Prakash sitting by my bedside. "What about going for lunch?" he asked. I was deeply touched by his affection and concern. I found out later that Dr. Brahm Prakash had come to my room twice before that, but had gone away on finding me asleep. Sorry, he had waited all the time for me to get up and have lunch with him. I was sad, but not alone. The company of Dr. Brahm Prakash filled me with new confidence. He made he made light conversation during the meal, carefully avoiding the SLV-3 but gently providing me solace. Chapter 9: Builders. Dr. Brahm Prakash helped me endure this difficult period. In practice, Dr. Brahm Prakash employed the frontline damage control principle. Just get the fellow home alive, he'll recover. He drew the entire SLV team close and demonstrated to me that I was not alone in my sorrow at the SLV-3's failure. "All your comrades are standing by you," he said. This gave me vital emotional support, encouragement, and guidance. A post flight review conducted on 11th August 1979 was attended by more than 70 scientists. A detailed technical appraisal of the failure was completed. Later, the post flight analysis committee, headed by S.K. Athithan, pinpointed the reason for the malfunction of the vehicle. It was established that the mishap occurred because of the failure of second stage control system. No control force was available during the second stage flight, due to which the vehicle became aerodynamically unstable, resulting in altitude and velocity loss. This caused the vehicle to fall into the sea even before other stages could ignite. Further in depth analysis of the second stage failure identified the reason as the draining of a good amount of red fuming nitric acid, RFNA, used as the oxidizer for the fuel power at the stage. Consequently, When the control force was demanded, only fuel was injected, resulting in zero force. A solenoid value is in the oxidizer tank, remaining open due to contamination after the first command at T8 minutes, was identified as the reason for the draining of the RFNA. The findings were presented to Professor Dhawan at a meeting of top ISRO scientists and were accepted. Sorry. Everybody was convinced by the technical cause and effect sequence presented that there was a general feeling of satisfaction about the whole exercise of failure management measures taken. I was still unconvinced though, and felt restless. To me, the level of responsibility is measured by one's ability to confront the decision making process without any delay or distraction. On the spur of the moment, I stood up and addressed Professor Dhawan. Sir, even though my friends have technically justified the failure, I take the responsibility for judging the RFNA leak detected during the final phase of countdown as insignificant. As a mission director, I should have put the launch on hold and saved the flight if possible. In a similar situation abroad, the mission director would have lost his job. I therefore take responsibility for the SLV-3 failure. For quite some time, there was pin drop silence in the hall. Then Professor Dhawan got up and said, I'm going to put Kalam in orbit," and left the place, signaling that the meeting was over. The pursuit of is a combination of great elation and great despair. I went over many such episodes in my mind. Johannes Kepler, whose three orbital laws form the basis of space research, took nearly 17 years after formulating the two laws about planetary motion around the sun. To
Sorry,
enunciate
ma'am.
his sorry,
Sorry, ma'am, for late. Can I know page number, please?
yeah, page number 61 of the PDF.
Ma'am, may know paragraph
The last paragraph on that side. We are at to enunciate his third law.
61, page number.
Yeah, page 61.
The starting of the paragraph is the pursuit of science is a combination of great elation. That paragraph.
Yes, ma'am, you can continue. Continue, ma'am, please.
Uh, I can continue reading.
Yes, ma'am, yes, ma'am.
All right, yeah. To enunciate his third law, which gives the relation between the size of elliptical orbit and the length of time it takes for the planet to go around the sun. How many failures and frustrations must he have gone through? The idea that the man could land on the moon, developed by the Russian mathematician Konstantin um, Tsewalski, was realized after nearly 4 decades, and by the United States at the Professor Chandrasekhar had to wait nearly 50 years before receiving the Nobel Prize for his discovery of the Chandrasekhar limit, a discovery made while he was a graduate student at Cambridge in the 1930s. If his work had been recognized then, it could have led to the discovery of the black hole decades later. How many failures must von Braun have gone through before his Saturn launch vehicle was put on the moon? These thoughts helped to give me the ability to withstand apparently irreversible setbacks. Early in November 1979, Dr. Brahm Prakash retired. He had always been my sheet anchor in the turbulent waters of VSSC. His belief in team spirit had inspired the management pattern for the SLV project, which later became a blueprint for all scientific processes in the country. Dr. Brahmprakash was a very wise counselor who gave me valuable guidance whenever I deviated from my mission objectives. Dr. Brahmprakash not only reinforced the traits which I had acquired from Professor Sarabhai, but also helped me give them new dimensions. He always cautioned me against haste. Being big scientific projects are like mountains, which should be climbed with as little effort as possible and without urgency. The reality of your own nature should determine your speed. If you become restless, speed up. If you become tense and high strung, slow down. You should climb the mountain in a state of equilibrium, when each task of your project is not just a means to an end, but a unique event itself, that you are doing it well, he would tell me. The echo of Dr. Brahmprakash's advice could be heard in the Emerson's poem on Brahma. If the red layer, if the red slayer, think he slays, or if the slain think he is slain, they know not well the subtle ways I keep and pass and turn again. To live only for some unknown future is superficial. It is like climbing a mountain to reach the peak without experiencing its sides. The sides of a mountain sustain life, not the peak. This is where things grow, experience is gained, and technologies are mastered. The importance of the peak lies only in the fact that it defines the sides. So I went on towards the top, but always experiencing the sides. I had a long way to go, but I was in no hurry. I went in little steps, just one step after another, but each step towards the top. At every stage, the SLV3 team was blessed with some extraordinary courageous people. Along with Sudhakar and Sivarama Krishnan, there was also Sivakaminathan. He was entrusted with bringing the C brand transponder from the Trivandam to SHAR for integration with the SLV3. The transponder is a device fitted with the rocket system to give the radar signals which are powerful enough to help it track the vehicle from the takeoff site to the final impact point. The SLV3 launch schedule was dependent on the arrival and integration of this equipment. On landing in the Madras airport, the aircraft which Siwakami was traveling in skidded and overshot the runway. Dense smoke engulfed the aircraft. Everyone jumped out of the aircraft through emergency exits and desperately fought to save themselves, all except Siwakami, who stayed in the aircraft till he removed the transponder from his baggage. He was among the last few persons, the others being mostly aircraft crew, to emerge from the smoke, and he was hugging the transponder close to his chest. Another incident from those days that I recall clearly relates to Professor Dhawan's visit to the SLV 3 assembly building. Professor Dhawan, Madhavan Nair, and I were discussing some finer aspects of the SLV 3 integration. The vehicle was kept on the launcher in a horizontal position when we were moving around examining the readiness of integrated hardware. I noticed the presence of big water ports for extinguishing fire in case of an accident. For some reason, I felt uncomfortable at the sight of those ports facing the SLV3 on the launcher. I suggested to Madhavan Nair that we could rotate the ports so they were apart by a full 180. This would prevent the freak possibility of water gushing out and damaging the rocket. To our surprise, within minutes of Madhavan Nair getting the ports reversed, powerful water jets gushed out of the ports. The vehicle safety officer had ensured the functioning of the firefighting system without realizing that it could have wrecked the entire rocket. This was a lesson in foresight. Or did we have divine protection? On 17th July 1980, 30 hours before the launch of the second SLV-3, the newspapers were filled with all kinds of predictions. One of the newspapers reported, "The project director is missing and could not be contacted." Many reports preferred to trace the history of the first SLV-3 flight and record how the third stage had failed to ignite because of lack of fuel and the rocket had nosedived into the ocean. Some highlighted the SLV-3's possible military implications in terms of acquiring the capability for building IRBM. Some were general prognosis of all that ailed our country and related it to the SLV-3. I knew that the next day's launch was going to decide the future of the Indian space program. In fact, to put it simply, the eyes of the whole nation were on us. In the early hours of the next day, 18th July 1980, at 0803 hours, to be precise, India's first satellite launch vehicle, SLV-3, lifted off from SHAR. At 600 seconds before takeoff, I saw the computer displaying data about stage 4 giving the required velocity to the Rohini satellite carried as payload to enter its orbit. Within the next 2 minutes, Rohini was set into motion in the low Earth orbit. I spoke in the midst of screeching decibels, the most important words I've ever uttered in my life. Mission director calling all stations. Stand by for an important announcement. All stages perform to mission requirements. The fourth stage, apogee, motor has given the required velocity to put Rohini satellite into orbit. There were happy cries everywhere. When I came out of the blockhouse, I was lifted onto shoulders of my jubilant colleagues and carried in a procession. The whole nation was excited. India had made its entry into the small group of nations which possess satellite launch capability. Newspapers carried news of the event in their headlines. Radio and television stations aired special programs. Parliament greeted the achievement with the thumping of desks. It was both a culmination of a national dream and the beginning of a very important phase in our nation's history. Professor Satish Dhawan, chairman ISRO, threw his customary guardedness to the winds and announced that it was now well within ability to explore space. Prime Minister Indira Gandhi cabled her congratulations, but the most important reaction was that of the Indian scientific community. Everybody was proud of this 100% indigenous effort. I experienced mixed feelings. I was happy to achieve the success which had been evading me for the past 2 decades, but I was sad because the people who had inspired me were no longer there to share my joy. My father, my brother in law Jalauddin, and Professor Sarabhai. The credit for the successful SLB-3 flight goes first to the giants of the Indian space program, Professor Sarabhai in particular, who had preceded this effort, next to the hundreds of VSSC personnel who had, through sheer willpower, proved the mettle of our countrymen, and also not least to Professor Dhawan and Dr. Brahm Prakash, who had led the project. We had a late dinner that evening. Gradually, the din and clatter of the celebrations calmed down. I retired to my bed with almost no energy left. Through the open window, I could see the moon amongst the clouds. The sea breeze seemed to reflect the buoyancy of the mood on Sriharikota Island that day. Within a month of the SLV-3 success, I visited the Nehru Science Center in Bombay for a day in response to an invitation to share my experiences with the SLV-3. There, I received a telephone call from Professor Dhawan in Delhi asking me to join him the next morning. We were to meet Prime Minister Mrs. Indira Gandhi. My hosts at the Nehru Center were kind enough to arrange my ticket to Delhi, but I had a small problem. It had to do with my clothes. I was dressed casually, in as is my wont, and wearing slippers. Not by the standards of etiquette, suitable attire in which to meet the Prime Minister. When I told Professor Dhawan about this problem, he told me not to worry about my dress. You are beautifully clothed in your success, he quipped. Professor Dhawan and I arrived at the Parliament House the next morning. A meeting of the parliamentary panel on science and technology chaired by the Prime Minister was scheduled. There were about 30 members of the Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha in the room, which was lit by a majestic chandelier. Professor M.G.K. Menon and Dr. Nag Chaudhary were also present. Srimati Gandhi spoke to the members about the success of the SLV-3 and lauded our achievement. Professor Dhawan thanked the gathering for the encouragement given by them to space research in the country and expressed the gratitude of the ISRO scientists and engineers. Suddenly, I saw Srimati Gandhi smiling at me as she said, Kalam, we would like to hear you speak. I was surprised by the request as Professor Dhawan had already addressed the gathering. Hesitantly, I rose and responded. I am indeed honored to be in this great gathering of nation builders. I only know how to build a rocket system in our country, which would inject a satellite built in our country by imparting to it a velocity of 25,000 per kilometer per hour. There were thunderous applause. I thank the members for giving us an opportunity to work on a project like SLV-3 and prove the scientific strength of our country. The entire room was irradiated with happiness. Now that the project SLV-3 had been successfully completed, VSSC had to reorganize its resources and redefine its goals. I wanted to be relieved of the project activities and consequently Prakash Sandlas from my team was made the project director for the SLV-3 continuation project, which aimed at making operational satellite launch vehicles of a similar class. With a view to upgrade the SLV-3 by means of certain technological innovations, the development of augmented satellite launch vehicles (ASLVs) had been on the cards for some time. The aim was to enhance the SLV-3 payload capability from 40 kg to 150 kg. MSR Dev from my team was appointed project director of ASLV. Then, to reach the Sun synchronous orbit, 900 kilometers, a PSLV was to be made. The Geo Satellite Launch Vehicle (GSLV) was also envisaged through as a distant dream. Though as a distant dream. I took up the position of director, aerospace dynamics and design group, so that I could configure the forthcoming launch vehicles and technology development. I'm sorry, can I just have 1 minute? There's someone at the door and no one's here to open it.
Yes, sure, ma'am.
Yeah, thank you. Just give me a minute. I'll be back. So sorry, I will continue reading now. The existing VSSC infrastructure was inadequate to handle the size and weight of the future launch vehicle systems, and the implementation of all these projects was going to require highly specialized facilities. New sites were identified for the expanded activities of VSSC as Wati Yur Kavu and Balyamala. Dr. Srinivasan drew up a detailed plan of these facilities. Meanwhile, I carried out analysis of the application of SLV-3 and its variants with C- um, Sivadhanu Pillai and compared the existing launch vehicles of the world for missile applications. We established that the SLV-3 solid rocket systems would meet the national requirements of payload delivery vehicles for short and intermediate ranges, 4,000 kilometers. We contended that the development of one additional solid booster of 1.8-meter diameter with 36 tons of propellant along with SLV-3 subsystems would meet the ICBM requirement above 5,000 kilometers for a 1,000 kg payload. This proposal was, however, never considered. It nevertheless paved the way for the formulation of the re-entry experiment, REX, which much later on became Agni. The next SLV-3 flight, SLV-3D1, took off on 31st May 1981. I witnessed this flight from the visitors gallery. This was the first time I witnessed a launch from outside the control center. The unpalpable truth I had to face was that by becoming the focus of media attention, I had aroused envy among some of my senior colleagues, all of whom had equally contributed to the success of SLV-3. Was I hurt at the coldness of the new environment? Perhaps yes, but I was willing to accept what I couldn't change. I have never lived off the profits of others' minds. My life, in keeping with my nature, has never been that of a ruthless achiever. The SLV-3 was made not by force and manipulation, but through consistent collective effort. Then why the sense of bitterness? Was it peculiar to the VSSC, top level, or universal reality? As a scientist, I was trained to reason out reality. In science, reality is that which exists. And because this bitterness was real, I had to reason it out. But can these things be reasoned out? Were my post SLV experiences leading me into a critical situation? Yes and no. Yes, because the glory of SLV-3 had not gone to everyone who deserved it, but hardly anything could have been done about that. No, because the situation can be considered critical for a person only when realization of the internal necessity becomes impossible. And that certainly was not the case. In fact, the concept of conflict is built upon this basic idea. In retrospect, in retrospect, I can only say that I was fully aware of a great need of actualization and renewal. In January 1981, I was invited by Dr. Uh, Bhagirata Rao of the Altitude Laboratory, now the Defense Electronics Application Laboratory, DEAL, Dehradun, to give a lecture to the SLV-3. The renowned nuclear scientist, Professor Ramana, who I had always admired and who was, I'm very sorry, and who was then the scientific advisor to the defense minister, presided over the gathering. He spoke on India's efforts in generating nuclear energy and the challenge in conducting the first nuclear test for peaceful purposes. As I had been so closely involved with the SLV-3, it was natural that I was soon in full spate about it. Later, Professor Raja Ramana invited me for a private meeting over tea. I'll stop here for a minute so that we can discuss what we've read so far, and then I'll continue. Does anyone have anything to say?
Yes, no, no problem. Shall discuss after 1 minute.
Good evening, everyone.
Good
So
evening.
now what we have read majorly, Drishti, it is, I think, so more of technical things, that technical parts, how the failure affected Mr. Kalam.
Yeah.
That was a very wonderful thing that Professor Dhawan, how he consoled him, and like a baby, like he was sleeping, and 3 times he came to see him.
Yeah.
So it is, these human things are so, we feel so touched, like a person of such a stature of Professor Dhawan, and coming and just waiting for a person to get up and talk to him is really very touching.
Yeah, and also the way he described failure, then the
Yes,
analogy of the mountain and sides, that was also really well written.
definitely, definitely. We always think about the people, those who reach the peak, but it is the journey that has to be the experience that is what we gain from the journey, not from the
Yeah.
destination. The go like reaching the destination is the goal, but the experiences are gained when we travel the mountain sides or whatever, whenever we want, whenever wherever we go. That is something very important. That is why it is said enjoy the journey, because we learn so many things from that.
I
Thank,
completely agree. Yeah.
yeah, thank you. Chandrasekhar, you want to say something?
Yeah, yes, Didi. And I want to like say this sentence by Abdul Kalam when he got a success, but he have no one there with him because his father and his brother-in-law and his professor Sarabhai, they are all mentors for Abdul Kalam ji, but there is no one there on that success time. Abdul Kalam got the success, but there is no support, there is no mentors who inspire the Abdul Kalam. These people.
That is why it is said, na, it is so important to have your family, your friends. You may achieve heights, but if there is no
Yes.
one to share your success, that success doesn't hold any meaning.
Yes, Abdul Kalam ji say like that only. My father is also not there. My brother-in-law, and Professor Sarabhai is guru at that time. No one there, but he got a success. But he not at all happy. By he said, Abdul Kalam said, really,
I
this
can,
is
I can correlate to this because when I had become the principal in 2015, I had nobody left. Like my father had passed away, my children were away, and I was all alone by myself. And even though that was such a great milestone in my life, but there was no one to share the happiness.
yes, yes, Didi. Yes.
It
Thank
was,
Yes,
you.
I think so. You can continue, Drishti.
yeah, I'll continue reading. The first thing that struck me when I met Professor Ramana was his genuine pleasure at meeting me. There was an eagerness in his talk, an immediate sympathetic friendliness, accompanied by quick, graceful movements. The evening brought back memories of my first meeting with Professor Sarabhai, as if it was yesterday. The world of Professor Sarabhai was internally simple and externally easy. Each of us working with him was driven by a single minded need to create and lived under conditions which made the object that needed of that need directly accessible. Sarabhai's
Uh,
work, sorry,
no, no, no. I have like I thought I remember this. No, no, no. Yeah, Abdul Kalam said, "Nee, this is internally simple, externally easy." I think we are
yeah,
going to start. Oh,
yeah.
no, no. You can continue. Continue.
Oh, okay. I thought you wanted to add something more. Sorry. Yeah. Sarabhai's world was tailor made to our dreams. It had neither too much nor too little of anything needed by any one of us. We were divided by our requirements without a remainder, sorry. My world by now had no simplicity left in it. It had become an internally complex and externally difficult world. My efforts in rocketry and in achieving the goal of making indigenous rockets was impeded by external obstacles and complicated, sorry, by internal wavering. I was aware that it required a special effort of the will to sustain my trajectory. The coordination of my present with my past had already been jeopardized. The coordination of my present with my future was uppermost in my mind when I went to have tea with Professor Ramana. He did not take long to come to the point. The Devil missile program had been shelved in spite of tremendous achievements made by Narayan and his team at DRDL. The entire sorry The entire program of military rockets was reeling under persistent apathy. The DRDO needed somebody to take command of their missile programs, which had been stuck at the drawing board and static test bed stages for quite a while. Professor Ramana asked me if I would like to join DRDL. Sorry. And shoulder the responsibility of shaping the Guided Missile Development Program, GMDP. Professor Ramana's proposal evoked a mixture of emotions in me. When again would I have such an opportunity to consolidate all our knowledge of rocketry and apply it? I felt honored by the esteem in which Professor Ramana held me. He had been the guiding spirit behind the Pokhara nuclear test and was thrilled by the impact he had helped create on the outside world about India's technical competence. I knew I would not be able to refuse him. Professor Ramana advised me to talk to Professor Dhawan on this issue so that he would He could work out the modalities of my transfer from ISRO to DRDL. I met Professor Dhawan on 14th January 1981. He gave me a patient hearing with his typical penchant for weighing everything carefully to make sure he didn't miss a point. A markedly pleasant expression came to his face. He said, I am pleased with the appraisal of my man's work. He then smiled. I've never met anyone with a smile quite like Professor Dhawan. A soft white cloud. You could picture it in any shape you wanted to. I wondered how I should proceed. Should I formally apply for the post so that DRDL could send the appointment order? I inquired of Professor Dhawan. No, don't pressurize them. Let me talk to the top level management during my next visit in New Delhi. Professor Dhawan said, I know you've always had one foot in DRDO. Now your whole center of gravity seems to have shifted towards them. Perhaps what Professor Dhawan was telling me had an element of truth in it, but my heart had always been at ISRO. Was he really unaware of that? Republic Day 1981 brought with it a pleasant surprise. On the evening of 25th January, Madhavan, secretary to Professor U.R. Rao, rang up from Delhi to inform me about the Home Ministry announcement about the conferment of the Padma Bhushan Award on me. The next important call was from Professor Dhawan to congratulate me. I felt blissfully elated as it was from my guru. I rejoiced with Professor Dhawan at his receiving the Padma Vibhushan and I congratulated him wholeheartedly. I then rang up Dr. Brahm Prakash and thanked him. Dr. Brahm Prakash chided me for the formality and said, I feel as if my son has got the award. I was so deeply touched by Dr. Brahm Prakash's affection that I could no longer keep my emotions in check. I filled my room with the music of Bismillah Khan's Shehnai. The music took me to another time, another place. I visited Rameswaram and hugged my mother. My father ran his caring fingers through my hair. My mentor, Jalaluddin, announced the news to the crowd gathered on Mosque Street. My sister Zohara prepared special sweets for me. Pakshi Lakshmana Sastri put a tilak on my forehead. F.R. Solomon blessed me holding the Holy Cross. I saw Professor Sarabhai smiling with a sense of achievement. The sapling which he had planted 20 years ago had finally fully grown into a tree whose fruits were being appreciated by the people of India. My Padma Bhushan evoked mixed reactions at BSSC. While there were some who shared my happiness, there were others who felt I was being unduly singled out for recognition. Some of my close associates turned envious. Why do some people fail to see the great values of life because of sadly twisted thought processes? Happiness, satisfaction, and success in life depended on making the right choices, the winning choices. There are forces in life working for you and against you. One must distinguish the beneficial forces from the malevolent ones and choose correctly between them. An inner voice told me that the time had come for a long felt but ignored need for renewal. Let me clean my slate and write new sums. Were the earlier sums done correctly? Evaluating one's own progress in life is not an easy task. Here, the student has to set his own questions, seek his own answers, and evaluate them to his own satisfaction. Judgment aside, 18 years at the ISRO was too long a stay to leave without pain. As for my afflicted friends, the lines by Lewis Carroll seemed very appropriate. You may charge me with murder or want of sense. We are all of us weak at times. But the slightest approach to a false pretense was never among my crimes. I think we can stop here and then discuss the remaining part of what I read, if that's okay with everyone.
Yes, ma'am, sure.
Yes.
Yeah. Any like feelings, thoughts, anything that we've read about what we've read?
Can I share this? Abdul Kalam ji, when he visited his hometown, uh, where there is no difference between them. The Abdul Kalam ji treated as equally Brahmins and treated equally as Muslims. So they are both are friends. They're not at all different partiality in their surroundings where Abdul Kalam ji live. And as he is a became like a scientist, ISRO scientist, a DRDO scientist, but when he visited his hometown, he's like live simple. His home also not like rich, but the home like is like where father they take home, same home that there is no changes as like a simple person. And there is no different partiality did in Muslims or Brahmins in his life in his hometown as if Abdul Kalam ji life. Hello.
Yeah, I was going to add on to that. Yeah, everyone is together. No one has any differences in them. They all collectively came together and celebrated an event that was very momentous for India. Anything else?
I think so. This is the this is the thing that has been throughout there in the novel. That people from so many castes, I think so, in small places, small villages or small cities like Rameshwaram, it is so beautiful. That is the fabric of India, that there is no difference between Hindus, Muslims, Christians, Sikhs. Like they consider, everybody considers their victory as their own. Anything happening good, they consider as, yes, it is the name of the village, it is the name of the city. So this is something really very great of this book, which I really loved. Like now in the present scenario, how we see that always it is said, no, Hindu, we should not be, Hindus and Muslims should go back to Pakistan and all. So this is really very disheartening. But reading this is the real fabric of India, the culture of India, that we have been staying here peacefully since ages.
Yeah.
What I love.
And India is a secular state, which is like India has no state religion, essentially. So it's this sort of reflects that secularism. So all of us, no matter what our caste is, no matter what our religion is, we're all coming together and we're celebrating a moment that is celebrated by all Indians. And it just shows how strong India's patriotism is, or even nationalism is. We all are proud of any achievements that happen in our country because they are like they resonate very highly with us.
Yes. Yeah, like tomorrow there is match. I think so, today or tomorrow, I don't know.
Yeah.
Everybody is praying that Australia should not win.
Yeah.
This is something, this is what is Indianness. This is what is Indianness. This is what is real India. We don't know. Like so many Muslim players are also there. So many like people from so many different castes and sects are playing in the Indian team. But the goal
Yeah.
is one, that Australia should not win. So that is something really good. Great.
Yeah. And also the inclusion of these poems that are there, or like these lines that from different authors that have been included.
Yes, that is that correlation is really great. This
Yeah.
shows that how well read, even though after being so busy, he is so well read.
No, I
Yeah.
think Abdul Kalam ji in the separate room where when he became a president, Abdul Kalam ji in his room he used to like sing bhajans and he used to love music, and also he said no, I used to listen Bismil Khan Shanai music. He's a
Yeah.
great musician. I thought maybe Bismil Khan Shanai.
Yes. Bismillah Khan was one of the best Senai Vadak we had in our country, and he belonged to Haridwar. The best part was that he, like it is still said in sometimes that we can hear Bismillah Khan's Shenai in the streets of Kashi.
Oh, oh, oh.
Yeah.
Uh,
Anything else? So I think this is where we can wind up today. Because then from the next session, we'll start on the new part.
Thank you
yes,
so
ma'am,
much
sure.
for reading for us. It was
Thank you so much.
Chandrasekhar. It is really nice to hear your views. Good night.
Thank you,
Good night,
Taranjit. Thank
everyone.
you, ma'am. Bye, ma'am. Good night, everyone.
You on Monday. Be there on time. I really when you are there.
Thank you. Actually, I am unable to join because I have went 9 o'clock for your dinner. We have fixed time is there
Okay.
9 p.m. So I'll after
Staying
dinner I can.
Hostel? You're staying in a hostel?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
I'm staying there in hostel, so that's why I'm unable to join at a time.
Okay. It's okay.
Uh,
Thank, thank you.
thank,
Thank you so
everyone.
much. Good night, everyone.
Good night. Good night. Have a lovely weekend.
Same to you. Thank you so much.
Bye, ma'am. Bye.
Bye bye.